there, and welcome to the Memory Kitchen, where we're celebrating the National Day of Reflection with food, family and friends. Marking 2 years since the beginning of the first lockdown, today we come together to support the millions of people who've lost loved ones during the pandemic and remember those we have lost. As Julia Child so wisely said, people who love to eat are the best people. They're the most trustworthy people as well. And we have some truly great people here today. Joining me around the Memory Kitchen table are Nikesh Shukla, Romy Gill, Levi Roots and Danny Malin. Nikesh Shukla is a critically acclaimed author and contributing editor to The Observer magazine. Romy Gill, MBE, is a chef, writer and a familiar face, of course, on Ready Steady Cook. Levi Roots is the man behind the famous Reggae Sauce, as well as a musician who's played with James Brown and entertained Nelson Mandela. Danny Malin is a social media sensation whose heartwarming Rate My Takeaway videos have won him hundreds of thousands of fans on YouTube. And behind the scenes in the kitchen, we have food writer extraordinaire Barney Desmazery and our wonderful chef, Charlie Urry. Now, gang, you've all got your bags of ingredients in front of you, and Chef Charlie is over there in the kitchen, poised like a cobra, ready to spring into action. So let's get cooking. Nikesh is on his way to Sweet Mart in Bristol to shop for ingredients. His memory dish is chili paneer, which he chose because it reminds him of happy times his mum spent away from the kitchen.
My mum used to shop at a place just like this called Sunrup, which was opposite my kaka's house. And when I first moved to Bristol and was desperate to find spices and things like paneer and lassies and mangoes, not like supermarket mangoes, but proper mangoes, the real mangoes, the mangoes that only the South Asians know about, those kinds of mangoes. People kept telling me about Sweet Mart, and I came down and I was like, oh my God, I've come home. Get some green chilies. These are the ones that my mum always used to get. They're very multifaceted. My dad used to have them in a bowl next to his Weetabix. Paneer is one of those cheeses that really takes on the delicious properties of whatever it's marinated in.
Okay, have a lovely day.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye. Bye.
Nikesh, your memory dish that you've chosen today, it sounds utterly delicious, chili paneer.
In the memoir and in other bits of my work, I've written extensively about my mum as a cook and my mum in the kitchen, and the kitchen as a sacred space in our house, and you know, the food that she used to prepare for us and how amazing that was and how that made me feel safe and at home and all the rest of it. And so when I was asked to come up with a dish for this, I thought, instead of always thinking about my mum in the kitchen, I wanted to think about her enjoying food. And so I picked a dish that she always ordered out, and this was a dish that we would share. And I have very few memories of my mum enjoying eating food. It's always like, she's sort of sadly always associated with the preparation of
It's
food.
stressful.
Yeah.
It's stressful. Was she the sort of mum that was always cooking for loads of people as
Yeah.
well? Yeah, you see, that's stressful.
So Nikesh, I absolutely love paneer, so I'm super excited about this. But this isn't not traditional, but this isn't like your average paneer dish, is it? This is a bit different.
In the mid-90s, it started up this sort of Indo-Chinese fusion restaurants in London, which obviously had been going on in India and China for a while, I think.
So you got the spring onions and the peppers from the Chinese influence, but you got the paneer from the Indian influence.
It was the dish that my mum, like, she really felt like she was having a night out if she was having chili paneer. And
your mum died in 2010.
Yes.
And so this is a dish, chili paneer, that you think of your mum kind of at her best, would you say?
Yeah, out, socialising, enjoying food, not like in the kitchen while we're eating.
So you're a bit of a cook, Nikesh.
Yeah.
I get the vibes. How do you think your mum's cooking has influenced you?
In 2011, I moved to Bristol, and I realised that all this time that my mum had spent saying, I need to teach you how to cook Gujarati food, and I'd just gone, no, I'll just eat it when I come home. And suddenly I didn't have her to prepare all that food for me. And in 2011 or 2012, I was helping move my dad out of our childhood home, and I was clearing out the kitchen, and I opened the freezer, and at the back of the freezer was a Tupperware box of some of my mum's cooking, and so I defrosted it, and this sort of really magical thing happened because the kitchen, since my mum had died, it was just clean and sterile and unused.
Didn't smell.
It didn't smell,
Yeah.
and suddenly in the microwave, through the defrosting of her food, the kitchen suddenly just came alive again, and it smelled like my mum's kitchen. And so I heated up some rottleys on the stove and ate my mum's food, and it was just the most magical moment of my life. It was like a moment of resurrection.
Oh.
And I realised that I realised what I'd been missing all of this time, and a way that I could keep her with me. And so I started trying to teach myself how to cook her dishes. So I'd phone up my aunts, and they taught. Or my bar was still alive at the time, so they talk me through the dishes on the phone, and it would always be that sort of like annoying thing. Or they'd go, put some garam masala in, and you'd go, how much? And they'd go, as much
Just
as you
enough. Just
as much
enough.
as you need.
Oh.
And I think often you're trying to recreate a moment rather than a meal. And for the longest time, I was trying to recreate moments, but I hadn't realised that you can't recreate those moments.
Yeah.
All you can do is have a meal and commune with the cosmos, or whatever happens when you eat food that reminds you of something.
So Nikesh, do you think that cooking your mum's dishes has helped you grieve?
Yeah, I do think cooking mum's dishes has helped me grieve, because I think when someone dies and they're no longer with you, it's so easy to romanticise them and think about all of their best bits and roll your eyes at the not so good bits of their personality. But I really want to remember my mum, the wholeness of my mum, and so that I think that requires remembering the specificity of her every day, of the mundane moments, of the moments where she was just mum and I wasn't sort of going, well, I'll store this up for later memories. And so much of that is through food. And also I think I probably associate food with ideas of home now, and with ideas of feeling quite safe. Like one of my biggest memories of feeling safe as a teenager was sitting on the sofa curled up with my mum and my sister, eating and watching American sitcoms.
Oh, brilliant.
And
That sounds so good.
yeah, and so I think just keeping those things in my mind remind me to grieve a person who lived rather than a person I have sort of put on a pedestal.
Thank you so much for joining us in the Memory Kitchen today, Nikesh.
Thanks for having me.
Really nice to meet you, and good luck with your writing.
Thanks.
So Danny's a YouTube phenomenon. He's famous for visiting and rating takeaways across the land, armed with his trusty portable table and a penchant for kebabs. Danny, you're a ledge. Welcome to my fireside.
Thank you very much.
You've come all the way from Leeds. Thank you so
know.
much.
It's nice and warm as well, isn't it?
It is
Yeah,
good.
Not bad.
You're not getting too warm on one side, just on the one side.
No, I'm not cooking yet. We're all right. If you'd have to spin it around like I'm on a spit, won't I?
On a doner.
Yeah, I'm on a kebab.
Danny, now you lost your beloved partner, Carrie,
I did.
only a year ago.
Yeah, just a year, just over a year, yeah.
So it's really brilliant that you've come today,
Yeah.
because I know it can be extremely
Yeah.
sort of raw and difficult to talk about these things. But she was the love of your life, wasn't she, Carrie? And
Yeah, she won me right hand, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right hand, left hand, everything. And it just happened so suddenly. You know, 1 minute I'm making dinner, and the next minute she's in my arms, and she's gone.
yeah,
We've got 3 kids together,
yeah,
and it was just horrendous, to be honest.
And you did a lot of cooking together, didn't you?
Yeah. So I'm you know, I used to cook through the week, and Carrie did the cooking at the weekend. You know, I used to play about with food a little bit, and she's like, "Oh, stop mucking about with all this," and you know, stop being daft and just put something decent on the table. And yeah, it's, you know, it's hard now because there's not that enjoyment for me now in the kitchen what it used to be, because obviously I'm there on my own, and you know, I've not got the shouting and nagging not to muck about with food.
What was Carrie's favourite dish?
So she used to love to do a bolognese,
Right,
and
nice.
it like a sort of a Monday thing. I said, like, what's for tea? Bolognese. What's for tea? Bolognese on a Monday.
Always on a Monday.
Yeah, for some reason.
It's comforting that though, isn't it? Knowing that you're going to get a certain lovely dish.
It's
on
all
a
right,
certain
but if it's red hot outside, and she's banging bolognese on table.
What, through the summer months?
Oh yeah, she'd have jacket taty with a bit of bolognese on.
In August?
Oh yeah.
So Danny, is there a secret ingredient in your spaghetti bolognese we should all know about?
Well, there is, yeah. There's Marmite, believe it or not.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense.
Well, it didn't to me at first because I can't stand the stuff.
Yeah.
And Carrie used to just slip it in there. All right. Never told me for ages that this is what she put in. Yeah. All right. And then one day I was watching her making it. I'm thinking, why has she got Marmite out here? And she says, I put it in spaghetti bolognese all the time. Oh, it just blew my mind, to be honest. And then I've tried making it since, and I'm a bit hesitant to put the Marmite in because I just don't like the smell of it. But well, I can't taste it, but it enhances the flavour, doesn't it?
And Carrie played an important part in Rate My Takeaway, which is obviously how we know you. Yeah. And what kind of role did she play in that?
So obviously, just before I met the guys that I'd Rate My Takeaway, Carrie had done a video of me and just having a bit of a rant really about COVID and first lockdown, and we started filming them together. And it'd start off, she'd be laughing, and she'd say, "What's up, Dan?" And I'd harp on about people being daft chasing round supermarket for toilet roll, and she had quite a distinctive laugh. And so on these videos, you can hear her laughing, which like now it's nice because I can go back and if I ever want to hear a happy time, I've got 30, 40 videos where, although Danny, I can't see her, I can still hear her.
Yeah.
And I told this to my kids once, and I remember it one night. I was laid on bed and George come in and he says, "Can I watch a bit of telly on your bed?" So I says, "Yeah." So I'm in and out of sleep and dozing, and he put YouTube on and he put a video on, and obviously it started off with Carrie saying, "What's up, Dan?" And I just sat up because it was as if she was there in the room, and it just threw me completely. But it's you know, it's nice to have those memories, and then going forward with Rate My Takeaway, obviously she was pushing me to do it, and she's saying, "Look, you know, people are liking what you're doing, and you know, go out there and you're making people happy." And with the videos, people were saying it was bringing them through tough times with COVID, and people were suffering loss, and they were watching the videos and finding me funny, and I was connecting with people. And
it's a lifeline, Danny, isn't it?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, before Carrie passed away, it's not at the level that it is now, and I'd love for her to see it now. She'd be so proud, I think, and you know what we've been able to achieve with the channel, and you know how people that have helped. And I mean, I brought out a charity Christmas song at Christmas, and you know, she'd have just been laughing her head off at that kind of stuff.
Somewhere in the cosmos, she's there, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
She sounds like an absolutely wonderful person, and thank you so much for coming to talk about her, and I shall take that away with me, Danny.
Yeah.
I'm also going to take away the idea that I need to put a bit of Marmite into my cooking.
Yeah, just be careful.
Not everything, not a souffle. Not going to put it in a souffle.
No.
Or in an apple pie.
No, oof, it's spoiled apple pie, wasn't it?
But in a bolognese.
Yeah.
In memory of Carrie, I certainly will. Thank you so much, Danny.
No problem, thank you.
Next up, we visit Great British Bake Off alumna Briony May Williams, who's at home making us her Nana Pat's special apple pie. I wonder what happened to Paul Hollywood.
So I was on the Great British Bake Off in 2018. I got to the semi-finals, and then I went back in 2019 and won the Great Christmas Bake Off. So I did get a cake stand in the end. I dedicated the showstopper in Danish week to my Nana Pat, and it was called a cakecorne. They make it out of Danish pastries, but it's in the shape of a person. So we had to create our own, and I decided to dedicate it to my Nan, because a lot of my baking history comes from her. So I made, but rather than do her now, I did her kind of in the 40s with her victory curls and her, you know, glamorous clothes like she used to wear. So she sadly passed away in 2020 in November at the ripe old age of 95. She was an incredibly special person in my life, in all of my family's lives. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman, and we miss her every day. But she was a home economist, and she was an amazing baker, and she learnt to bake this apple pie from her mother, who would just do it by eye. You know, she would just literally just throw everything in the bowl and she didn't even measure it. And then my Nan used to make it for sort of family occasions and serve it up. So it's, you know, it's very much a generational pie that I hope to now pass on to my daughter as well. So it's very important. We've got all our ingredients, and very importantly, this bowl was actually my nana's bowl that she used to bake in. So it's a family heirloom, which I hope to pass down to Nora one day. To say that Nana Pat was an inspiration is really an understatement. You know, she's been there through my whole life. She was the kindest woman I've ever met, incredibly generous, very open-minded. You know, she was in her 90s, but you could talk to her about anything and she'd sit and listen and just hear what you have to say. She played a huge part in my life growing up. She would pick us up from school. She'd sit down and do my homework with me because my mum was a single working mum. So she relied a lot on my nan to help out with childcare. You know, she'd take my brother on his paper round rather than him getting on his bike and doing it himself. You know, she would always doing stuff for other people. And since she's passed, we all miss her so much. It's a blessing that my daughter got to know her great-grandmother, you know, for 5 years. That's something that not a lot of people get to do. But yeah, we miss her incredibly and her kindness. When Nana was, you know, in her last few weeks and months, we had a lot of time together, we talked a lot. I asked her to give me her apple pie recipe and she reeled it off from memory, every single measurement, every single step in the method. She knew it by heart, even though she probably hadn't actually baked it for years because of her age, but she still knew everything she had to do. And it was so sweet. She'd say, you know, and you can keep the trimmings for jam tarts for the kids. You know, she had all this just knowledge that she imparted, and, you know, methods of how to make sure that you rub the butter in properly. And it's just a very special memory for me, having her pass that down and loving the fact that she didn't even need to look it up in a recipe book. She already had it up there. You know, it's been well over a year and I still miss her every day. Anything that happens, I want to call and tell her. You know, she was always so proud of all of us for what we achieved. And yeah, I think, you know, it's a lovely thing to have those recipes from her. Like, she also gave me her soda bread recipe and other little recipes of hers that I will always keep and, you know, pass down to Nora, and hopefully it'll carry on, and it's kind of like carrying on her legacy almost, you know, through baking. And that is ready for the oven. You know, these dishes do connect back to her childhood, to where she grew up, you know, to Northern Ireland, to her family, to her farm. And it's lovely that, you know, she's passed those memories that are, you know, excuse the pun, all mixed in with this apple pie down as well, so that when I make it with Nora, I can tell her all about Granky and the farm and where Nan grew up and how they didn't have a fridge. You know, it was before electricity, and how my Nan didn't see a banana until she was 22, and, you know, stuff that maybe Nora, well, she probably will take for granted, but I can still carry that on, and it all comes, you know, it's all intertwined with these recipes and with that baking. Well, here it is, my lovely Nana Pat's absolutely lovely apple pie. When I think of Nana Pat now, I think of her sat in her chair with her newspaper, doing the crossword, which she did every day, and just the way her face lit up when any of us walked in the room. You know, she loved her family so much. I really miss seeing that because she was just so special. And she just had so much joy in her, had so much joy to share with everyone. So yeah, definitely, yeah. Or doing a Sudoku, she liked those as well. I think that's why she was so on it until her very last days. Very clever lady.
Now, I'm back, very much tartan and fireside, with Romy Gill, MBE. She's a familiar face that many of you will know, of course, from Ready Steady Cook. Romy, it's so lovely to have you here in our memory kitchen. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Mel. And lovely to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you too.
Yeah.
Now, you grew up, Romy, in Bengal of the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
But you moved here in 93.
Yes.
And I read somewhere that you used to cook momas and samosas to remind yourself of being in Bengal. Was that a tough time for you?
I think it is tough when you my parents were migrants. They moved from Punjab to Bengal. So, and then when I came here, I became an immigrant, you know, my first generation. My daughters are first generations here. I think when you leave a country, you miss the food, the family, you know, the friends you grew up with. And I used to love street food with my friends. And I think that was my thing. Street food, momos are very much street food, samosas are street food, and they're cheap and delicious and comforting.
There's nothing better.
Nothing
There is
better,
nothing better
nothing, yeah.
than a beautiful samosa. I'm
What a lovely bag of ingredients, Romy. So talk us through exactly how your mum used to make this, and pronounce it for me, please.
It's khichdi. It's
Khichdi.
khichdi. It's a simple dish. It's like a dish that actually is eaten all over India. This is something very comforting. It reminds me of my mum when, you know, I had a bad day, or my brother didn't let me play cricket or something like that, you know. So mum would make this beautiful, creamy lentil dish with rice, and
So
then
it's rice and lentils cooked together.
it's cooked together, yeah. You know, food was such an important part that played when my mum passed away. And I just ate, comfort ate. It gave me comfort. It just made me feel better.
Yeah. You've done an amazing amount of things in your life. So you sold your jewellery
To open a restaurant.
at a restaurant. That's a bold manoeuvre.
When opening a restaurant, you're a woman, you're from a different country, and third, you know, if you don't have experience, opening a restaurant was hard. So I just played all the cards, and I wasn't getting any bank loans. I just sold my jewellery. You know, it was
What was the jewellery?
gold jewellery.
Gold.
You know, as Indian people, we have a lot of gold jewellery when you get married. So I had a lot to sell, to invest in my restaurant, I think.
Did you feel sad losing the jewellery, or do you just think...
I think I was a bit sad because I called my parents and said, I'm going to sell my jewellery because I need to invest in my restaurant. And they said, we gave you at that time good jewellery. It's something that you can use it when you are in need.
It's canny, actually.
Exactly.
It's very canny. And do you think it was your lovely mum that kind of instilled those values of hard work? If you can't quite do it straight away, think of a way that you can, you know, like selling the jewellery. So does that come from your mum, do you think?
I think it's both parents and mum. Mum was very strong. Mum was a very strong lady. She also moved from Punjab when she got married and moved to Bengal where my dad worked. I think they both didn't speak English. They made sure all the three kids went to private English medium school, that we had good, you know, jobs and we could do better in our life. I think they had that cold, really hardcore values that it's really important that, you know, food was very important. You know, connecting with people was very important. I think that was the value they always said, respect. Yeah. That's what it was, that respect the people.
So, Romy, you lost your mum three years ago.
Yes.
And how have you found that process of the different stages of the grief over those 3 years?
I think I had just come back from the restaurant and I was just sitting, and I think I had a kind of a feeling. Sometimes you have that feeling. And I went to bed at 2 a.m. and next morning I know she was not there anymore. I still feel very emotional about it. I think that is what I ate myself all the time. That gave me, you know, any anxiety, anything. Like, it comforted me. I reminded of my memories with mum. But I still feel she's a part of me, you know. She'll always be a part of my daughters look like her. She's always will be part of us. But, you know, I feel that she's always there. Even the London Marathon when I did, the year she passed away, and I thought, I can't do it. Mel, I didn't train, and I did the marathon.
Sorry,
I did the marathon.
You didn't train?
I didn't train. I did the marathon because I couldn't do it. Every time I ran, I just cried. And my daughter said, Mummy, you have to do the London Marathon because it's you got
Fine
in.
for them to say.
I know. I don't know. I felt she was there with me.
Oh,
I know I don't believe in all these things, but I felt she was there, and I just did it. And I was still laughing at the end. You know, it was in a memory of my mum, and I just felt so good doing that marathon, which I've never felt in my life, you know.
Did you have a little sort of pack of samosas to keep you going?
I just think I've pictured my mum somewhere that she's there. She'll be really proud of me.
And Romy, she would be proud of everything that you've done, not just the marathons, all that you've achieved. It's been so lovely to hear these gorgeous memories. So thanks for coming
Thank
to
you
the
for
Memory
having
Kitchen.
me.
You're welcome. Now, next, we're going to visit Kalpna Woolf in Bristol. Kalpna is a cookery book author and founder of 91 Ways to Build a Global City. It's a charity which bridges the gap between Bristol's 91 language communities through the power of food. And Kalpna is actually cooking one of my favourites. It's her mum's 10-minute dal. Here we go.
There are 91 languages spoken in Bristol. This is a real cause for celebration. So we bring people together to eat, to share food, and that way get to know each other. Because when you're sharing food, you share your story. We say to people, bring something that means something to you, and I think sharing food is such a great act of kindness. You know, it opens people's hearts, but they also learn about the story behind that food, where it's from, what it means to the person, and sometimes whether it's connected to a lovely memory, because all food is connected to memories. Today I'm going to make my mum's 10-minute dal. We always called it 10-minute dal because it does take a bit longer than that, by the way. But it was the go-to dal, the go-to dish that we made regularly. We always have dal at home. But it also was a dal that if people came unexpectedly, that was a thing that we knew we could make quickly while we were chatting to them. They were having a cup of tea. They didn't know they were staying for dinner, but they had to stay for dinner. I'm dedicating this 10-minute dal to my mum, who died during COVID, sadly. She was so full of giving and so full of actually always cooking for us, 5 children who were always hungry. And she knew if she made the biggest pot of dal, we'd get through it, but she knew that actually that she would be nourishing and looking after us. My mum and my dad came from a town which is now Pakistan, and then during partition they fled to New Delhi, and they arrived in New Delhi as refugees. My father had fought for the British Army, and as part of that, if you survived, you got a British passport. So he came here on his own, because I couldn't afford for all of us to come together. And he had to leave my mum with 5 small children. We were very young, and she was not only looking after us, but she had to work as well at the same time. So very, very difficult for her. But she did it. She'd been to college in Delhi, but when she came here, her qualifications weren't recognised. So she ended up working in British Airways. Right at the bottom, she started by washing dishes, and she worked really hard. She worked from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, and she worked her way up to a senior chef, actually. She worked so hard. It was such a grind, I think, and looking after us the rest of the time. So she worked from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. He went to work at 7 p.m. and came back home at 6 a.m. So they hardly saw each other, but that was their life. My mum's main thing was her family. She wanted to know, had we eaten? Were we all right? She wanted to send us out into the world looking perfect, well-nourished, healthy, and ambitious. Her day started with, what was she going to cook for us? It was her way of showing the ultimate love to us, because she felt like she didn't have anything else. She would cook, and that was her way of saying, I love you, and I want to take care of you. My mother got COVID early on in lockdown, the first lockdown. And at that time, they didn't even know COVID was in the home. And we were not allowed to see her. She was obviously badly hit by COVID, but I think that the thing that got her in the end was she couldn't understand why we weren't there. She kept saying, to everybody, well, why aren't they coming? I think that's what really got to her, was that loneliness and the missing us. And we missed her so much. We didn't know what to do. And the last few weeks was so terrible. She was unwell for quite a long time. And then we called one morning, and her chest was really bad. She was rushed to hospital. I rushed out the door because I said, I'm going to go and see her, And the hospital rang me and said, you're not going to be able to come in. You can't come in, you know, we all sort of ran to the hospital. And then she passed away the next day. And I think that was one of the worst days of our lives. Sorry. You can't explain how isolated you feel, and you can't also imagine that you think, no, not her. She couldn't go like this. She could not. We all had to be around her. That's what she deserved. She deserved all of us. We knew she was elderly. Someday she'd go, but not yet, you know. She deserved all of us there, still, you know, around, the kids running around and us holding her hands. That's what she deserved. So sometimes I forget she's gone. Sometimes I think, oh, she's in the care home and my sister's gone to feed her, and we'll have a chat about it today, you know, because every day my sisters and I would talk, like, are you going? What are you going to make? And don't forget, Mum doesn't want the, dal today, she wants the other dal, and don't forget, Mum said, too much rice this week, you know, where's my dessert? So, you know, we'd be talking to each other, all of us, and I miss that. I miss that, you know, getting ourselves ready to look after our mum the way she had always looked after us.
Now, the crew are very excited about your Guinness Punch, Levi. I think we might need to send the runner out for a few more cans of stout. I am delighted to welcome the man, the legend, Mr. Levi Roots, to the fire. Thanks so much for coming to the Memory Kitchen today,
No
Levi.
problem at all.
Now, Charlie and Barney are busy cooking your Puerto Rican kitchen.
Yes, well, I'm not worried or anything like that. I'm just hoping they got the ingredients, because I know with Caribbean food sometimes it's a bit difficult to get everything that's in there. But I'm working on it in the supermarkets.
Yeah, it's that annoying thing, and I know this with my own mum. You say, how do you do that particular dish, da-da-da, and she's like, well, you just got to feel it, you just got to smell it, taste it, and it's like, well, yes, but how much do I put in?
Yeah.
Are you precise with your ingredients?
Well, my mom she is, but I think I've learned not to be precise, because I like to think of myself one of these new age type Caribbean chefs who will allow for change.
Okay.
Whereas traditional Caribbean chef, you cannot change anything at all. They'll want it exactly how their grandma and their grandma before that always made it.
Levi, this looks amazing. So is everything for your dish cooked in one pot?
It is, but traditionally in Jamaica it's not.
Yeah.
Rice and peas is one of the most iconic dishes in Jamaica. Yeah. Absolutely, the first dish, if I may also add. But I think when I wanted to cook this for my mom, I actually started to travel the Caribbean and got to see that it's not just Jamaica is the only island in the Caribbean. There are thousands of islands, and they all cook their rice and peas in a different way. And I wanted to cook something for my mom which was easy on the washing up.
Yes.
So this is only one pot in there.
And it
so
blocks the flavour in as well, right?
The flavour in,
yeah.
and she absolutely loved it.
We've got some really good Scotch bonnets.
Let me show off one for you.
Yeah, you sure?
Okay, nice and lovely. This is how you do it in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Joking, ain't you?
I honestly thought you were going to go
You're
for that.
absolutely joking. This is hotter than pepper spray, you know. Yeah. And again, it's not about hot chilies, because I think a lot of people always think that when you cook Caribbean food, it's sort of face-ache time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's absolutely. This is about the flavors. It's about the rice cooking into the chicken, into all the flavors.
All the juices, all the juices from the chicken go into the
Absolutely.
rice.
It's a comfort food.
It's also served with a Guinness Punch.
It's served with Guinness Punch, and again, you know, Guinness Punch is one of these magical things that you have on the table. And Guinness Punch is a bit like Bailey's, where you have the bitterness of the Guinness, but then you have the sweetness of suppligen and the condensed milk and nutmeg and vanilla and all that. It's just delicious. Oh, this is like a super duper version of a Bailey's. Oh. So nice with your fried chicken, make burgers finger licking, on your barbecue and your drumsticks, just put some reggae sauce on your dish. Boom.
So your grandmother, you mentioned grandmothers and mothers. Your
Yes.
grandmother Miriam, she looked after you. So when your parents came over as part of the Windrush
Yes.
generation in 1961,
Yes.
they left you and your siblings with grandmother Miriam.
Yeah.
So how was it growing up with grandmother Miriam in her kitchen?
It was beautiful. It was absolutely wonderful. And I wish somebody had asked me at the age of 10 when I was coming over here, did I want to leave? Because the kids never had a choice. Nobody asked me, did I want to leave
No one asked.
this beautiful woman that was teaching me about food and this lovely place of Clarendon in Jamaica where, you know, every lake has jumping fish, every tree has a fruit on there. And it's just the most idyllic place for a young boy to have grown up. And then all of a sudden I came home from play as I normally did, because every year my parents would send a suitcase for one of the kids to come over. And me being the youngest, I didn't realize what was happening. So every year I would see a brown suitcase would arrive for my parents from the UK in the corner, and I would see my grandmother in tears in the other corner. And I just didn't understand. All I would know that I would have a bit more room in the bed when one of my brothers and sisters left. So I didn't really understand what was happening. I knew they were, you know, going off and leaving me one at a time. And finally I came home from play one day and I saw the same scenario, and I saw my grandma crying on the other side, and I looked around and I realized that I didn't have a brother or sister left.
You were the last
it was my time to come. And she was in tears because she knew that she probably would have never seen her charges again, whereas my parents had left her with five children to look after. And every year she would be saying goodbye to them all, and then finally it was my, and I'm welling up a bit here because every time I think about it.
No, don't worry. It's very emotional stuff, isn't it?
Yeah,
All of this. Grandparents leaving, travelling so far.
Yes,
you came all the way to this crazy island of ours.
Didn't know my mum and dad because they left me when I was about 4 or 5, so I didn't really have a connection with them. It was just this wonderful woman, you know, my grandma, that was mom, dad and dog and everything to me at the same time. And leaving her was the most tragic thing I could ever think of. But I think those cookery lessons that she taught me, those days of being around her when I was a bit like a gopher, a sous chef, because everything that we had, we cooked in our garden. We were really poor, so we couldn't go to the shops and buy food. So everything was absolutely growing by her in our garden. And it was me, she would be calling me from up there, and I have to be climbing the ackee tree and the lemon tree and the mango tree and whatever it was, I had to be climbing, picking the fruits, coming back, and she would be churning, you know, this fantastic pot that she had, and she would be singing these Baptist church hymns that she would be singing. And I would be really just hanging on to what we call a frock tail as a kid then, you know. And that's why when I eventually came over here, even though I couldn't spell my first name, and as I mentioned to you earlier on, it only had 5 letters, and don't you dare call me I couldn't spell my first name with 5 letters coming over here and going into school at the age of 11. But one thing that I could do, I could cook a mean rice and peas and ackee and saltfish and oxtail and all the most delicious Caribbean dishes, because my grandmother, that was the stuff that she knew. She wasn't particularly educated herself, but
it was
she
in
could
you.
cook.
It was.
Yeah,
it
she
was
could
part
cook.
of you.
Yeah.
Amazing. And you said, Levi, that when you first came to England, you know, your mum and dad had left when you were 4, so you didn't really know them. You obviously, you got to know them extremely well, of course, and you say that your mum has been a huge influence on you, as well as your grandmother Miriam.
Yes, yeah. Well, my mom was a carbon copy of my grandma, you know, her mom, because I think she noticed that something was missing from her youngest child, who couldn't bond with my other brothers and sisters. My father didn't really accepted me as how I thought he would have. I thought being the youngest and not seeing him, I would have come over here and been the favorite of him, just like how I was the favorite of my grandma.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, and I think my mom, sorry.
No, don't worry, Levi, don't worry. Take a moment, it's absolutely fine.
I think my mom kind of spotted that maybe I need a little bit of, you know, extra attention, and she went about to write to my grandma and then to find out what she was doing with me, with the food and how, you know, she was operating. And my mom just sort of turned around to her own style and to be able to sort of help me in that respect. So even though I struggled at school, you know, really struggled badly, a bit of a follower because I wanted to catch up, you know, having not been able to do the curriculum thing, I just thought I wanted to be the cool kid, you know, that all the other kids liked. So, and in some ways that was the wrong thing to do. And my mom kind of spotted that, and she sort of brought the food in where I'd missed that. And that's how I managed to straighten out myself.
That's very interesting.
You know, through my mom. You know, so my mom passed away in 2020, just as the pandemic hit. And it was at the time when she had got a little bit sick before then, and I was cooking for her every day for the past 4 years. It was,
amazing. What
cooking
a lovely
stuff.
thing.
Yeah, and just really enjoying her stories of her telling me about my grandma, because again, when I left her, I wasn't really that old enough for her to be telling me about her life.
Yeah.
So I knew how my grandma cooked, and I got all her recipes, including the sauce recipe and everything, but I didn't really know much about her as a person. And again, it was my mom again that allowed me to tap into what this lovely woman that, you know, that looked after me, you know, importantly. And I got to understand a little bit about her.
What incredible women. I just love the sound of both of them.
Yeah.
The strength, the grit, the humour.
My grandma was the one with the humour. There was never a dull moment with her when we was growing up as kids. But for my mom, it was that hard work ethics that I think I got from her.
Yeah.
Because as I said about the Windrush generation, to do what they did, you know, they must.
So brave.
Absolutely.
So brave.
And my mom was just such in that way inclined. And I got that hard work that if something is going to be done, you're going to focus and you're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And I think when I struggled and eventually when I started my business, you know, after the carnival and that sort of stuff, and I knew now that I had my grandma's recipe. I was rubbish at Plan A, because Plan A was the music. Plan A was me getting on top of the pops and making the #1 song. And but I always had the Plan B in the back of my mind, because that was my grandmother's stuff, you know, the food and the cooking. And it is when I started to do the cooking, my mom is that, you know, that focusedness of what she was to be able to go through that, and as well as going to Dragons Den and do my stuff on there. I think that was the sort of inspiration coming from my mom.
Yeah, but the pride, you know, imagine how proud Grandmother Miriam would, I mean, amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I always say I remember when I was in the den, and if you remember that bit there when it was all going pear-shaped for me in Dragons Den. I probably was the worst person that's ever been on there. I mean, the camera zoomed in on top of my face when the sweat was just like, I was bathing in sweat and begging my grandma, the ghost of my grandma, to dig a hole in the ground and swallow me up or take me away from here. I remember at the time when I was in a kerfuffle and the producer said to me, "Oh, Mr. Levi, would you like to go to the back and have a think about the offer?" I went to the back and I prayed to my grandma. You know, I asked her, am I doing the right thing? Because here I was now, was about to make an investment in a product that I have always said was an inspiration from her. So it was rightfully that I went and prayed and asked her, should I accept the deal? And I got the inspiration and the vibe to say that even though I was giving away a bit more than I should have, it was 40%, but she said to me through the vibe that I should take it. And that's exactly what I did, and the rest is history.
How amazing. It's been so brilliant talking to you, Levi. You are an inspiration.
Thank you so much.
You know that. Thank you so much for coming.
Service!
Oh, now that's important. I think that service means me. Excuse me, Levi, better hop to it.
Chicken and Jamaican coleslaw, Mr. Roots. Look at that.
I've got the plantain as well to go with that. Smell that. Spag bol, Danny?
Look at that.
Spag bol?
Look at that.
Don't tell anyone.
Garlic bread.
Oh, my lord. Right, here we go, the last two dishes. We've got the paneer.
Yep.
And we have the khichdi. Oh, my lord. I want it all. It looks tofu, delicious that. Thanks, my love. Amazing. Cheers. So you've got all the dishes out in front of you. Are they as you imagined them? Are they bringing back any memories?
For me, yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most beautiful thing about this dish that I remember to do with my mom, when she got older, I wanted to cook it so I could mash things up.
Right.
Because when people are a bit older, they find it a bit difficult to chew things down.
Absolutely.
So this is a perfect dish so you can actually pull the chicken apart and just make it a little bit softer.
Right.
So she could enjoy it, you know, just one pot, one flavor, and she used to absolutely love it. It takes me back to my mom. It really does.
Nice. Danny, how do you rate this?
It's a solid 10 from me. The flavours in the meal, absolutely brilliant. And like I said, the bolognese, it's just blew me away. It's hit me there when I've tasted it first off, because it's how Carrie would have made it. So yeah, brilliant, and the rest of it's great. Yeah.
How's yours, Nikesh? You've got everything on the plate. You've gone for absolute omni lunch.
I've gone for, yeah, buffet ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's delicious, absolutely delicious.
Romy, how is it for you?
So delicious. I mean, the khichdi is so perfect. It's got that, you know, the nice tadka, which works well with the lentils and rice, and it's really, really delicious. And I'm enjoying. That reminds me of India, so it's so good.
Can I raise a toast, please? Your very, very good health, and it's been so lovely hanging out with you today. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yay. Nice punch.
There we go. Oh, it is a bit.
Oh, that's a good punch, Levi. That was absolutely delicious, I've got to say. That's all we've got time for in the Memory Kitchen today. Huge thanks to our guests, Romy, Nikesh, Levi and Danny, for sharing their memories, and to our kitchen team, Barney and Charlie, for recreating those recipes. This has been part of a series of online talks for the National Day of Reflection, a day to commemorate the 2nd anniversary of lockdown, led by Marie Curie. Today's a day for us to connect with each other as we support the millions of people who are grieving and reflect on the lives of the people we've lost during the last 2 years. Thanks to all of you at home for joining and for helping us to mark the National Day of Reflection. I'm going to eat some more, please excuse me.